for the young guys, there's little snappers and racing snakes. The 14 guys who played rugby, maybe just give them one last applause and say thanks so much for such a tremendous effort. And I think Stevie Pixon, you know, we owe him a special thanks as well, because he never understood the rules of rugby when he played. So, what he was doing out there officiating is beyond me, but Stevie, you're going to be proud of you.
He's qualified to referee. Andy! It was Cohen U-boat on the time and got Johnson.
On a more serious note also, I want to pay tribute to Ruth, who you know, has had the strength to come up here today. And I know that would have been a very, very difficult decision to make. So, you know, we really appreciate that as Euan's friends that go back so long. The fact that you've been able to join us, and I'd like to also say thank you for taking care of my friend.
Yeah.
So, I got Euan Lachlan Davidson Smylie. He'd be 52 years old this month, in fact. And he has an ability to keep sharing with us, because each year we'll be able to remember you when you have your Christmas lunch this year and your Christmas dinner, and you plow all those roast joints and things into you. And of course you lace up on the wine and the beer and then the pork at the end. By the time you wake up on December the 26th, your head is hurting and you've got a monster hangover. Well, think of Euan, because 26th of December is his birthday. Each year we'll go on and remember that. Yeah. I first met Euan in 1981. His dad, Seth Smylie, worked with me at the Lanelka base here in Sharjah, and he brought Euan out from Scotland during his university year, I think to keep him out of trouble, but also to give him a bit of summer work. And so Euan came out, and him and the son of one of the other chaps at Lanelka was employed to paint the massive warehouse that we had in Corfu. If anybody's been there, this thing's huge. Now, bearing in mind this poor guy had just come out of Scotland, and it was June or July of '81, and they were up on the scaffolding and got this paint job done. And we met within a few days of him arriving. I think Euan was only 20 years old then, 20 years and 7 months. And I was 23. And I thought, yeah, this is a good fellow, you know, good fun. We went and had a lot of drinks. Sharjah in those days had a lot of watering holes, as those of you were there then. I think people used to come down from Dubai and even Abu Dhabi to drink in the Sharjah pubs. And so Euan and I were back forward between Corfu and here, July and August, I think it was, of '81. And I look back now and I think, you know, that chap was just a year older then than my daughter is today, which is scary. She's just turned 19 and he was at 20 and a bit. But that made me think a bit further. If Euan can sustain a 30-year friendship and my daughter could do the same thing, then I think she would be very privileged, as I have been, to be Euan's friend. Yeah. Euan went back to Scotland about, I think it was September, October of 1981. And then he came back to the Emirates the following year, '82, about June, I think, whenever June or July, whenever the universities would have closed, and pretty much stayed on here from then. But before he left, the year prior, we were having some beers at, it was actually the Nell Gwyn, for those who remember that place in Sharjah. Horrible place. And Euan had, you know, he'd lost a lot of weight because of all this painting and stuff he was doing, sweating it off. And he said to me, you know, even then, as a young guy, he fancied himself as a real sort of example of sporting supremacy. And he always reminded us about that, of course. And he said, is there any way he can come and play rugby and display his superior ball handling skills? So I told him that there was a club here, Sharjah Wanderers, where I used to play. I said, they're not so good. We lose most of our games. It's just an excuse. Yeah, it's just an excuse to go to piss. I said, we go training for an hour, and then we go drinking for 4 hours after each training session. But it's good fun, and we can absolutely sing and drink any of the other rugby teams under the table. And he said, what else is there then? I said, well, there's this club down in Dubai Exiles. There's a bunch of prima donnas, really, but they play good rugby. And I don't apologise to any Exiles here. I said they play good rugby. They win most of their games, top of the league, And usually they get nominated to go and play rugby in the Hong Kong Sevens, but they certainly can't drink. They got no singing ability whatsoever. I think they had one song in their album. And I can remember Euan leaning over the table and Elgin kind of grabbed me by the neck and he said, "Take me to the Wanderers." So there was no time then, but a year later when he returned, I brought him up here at his dad's behest. And yeah, he started playing with the Wanderers. We all know Euan very, very well, and we've all got millions of stories that we can share about him, good ones, and very good ones. And so I'm hoping that Roger's, what he said earlier on, that he will actually encourage everybody just to share one of the tales, because Euan was just full of shit. It's a simple stuff. It's no more complicated than that. But yeah, we did so much together. He played with us here. Domo talked about diving. I did my BZAC diving course with Euan. He stayed at my house here in Sharjah many, many times. When I left here in 2003, Ruth and Euan came and stayed with us in Cyprus. Before that, he stayed at my family home in Zimbabwe. When I lived in Australia, the bugger came there as well. There's no getting rid of him. I think he came with Edwin. So, it takes a moment like this for me to think he did a lot for his friends. He made those efforts, and I have to say again, I feel privileged to have been his friend. He was actually the guy that branded me the name Peak. So there you go. There's a secret. There's a secret I've kept for 30 years. I'm not quite sure why.
It's totally undeserved.
There's absolutely undeserved. Hey! Look at those pictures. There's a little young, racing snake there, isn't there? But the thing with Euan was that he had this fantastic delivery. Whenever I'd see him, he'd say Peak. And in that one word, he'd sort of wrap up like contempt and threat. Just in that one word. Yeah, as I say, friends with Euan for 31 years now. I was away for a lot of that time, when I went to Australia, and sort of lost touch a bit, although he did come and stay with us. But in July last year, I moved back to the UK, where it actually presented me with a great opportunity to revisit my friend. So I could drive up to Gatwick and fly to either Glasgow or Edinburgh, and then take a car and go and visit Euan at Perth in that lovely apartment that Ruth had arranged in Rose Terrace, or up to the Nine Wells. And I was able to do that journey a few times. And I always felt a bit sort of apprehensive before I went into the room, because I didn't know what kind of shape my friend was going to be in. But and just as I get to the door, I sort of gather myself, open the door. Before I even got an opportunity to make eye contact with him, there'd be this noise. "Pete, what do you want here?" As soon as I heard that, and I knew Euan was good. And we'd have a good day, And I'm really, really privileged to be able to have had those opportunities to visit him. I can say that, Ruth, you did a tremendous job. He's a very lucky man. We, right through to the end, he kept his strength, his dignity, and his humour. Before I left last week, I spoke to his parents, and I asked them if there was anything they wanted me to read out. So they've each sent me a message. But I think I'll have a beer before I do that, if I can. And you've got to a glass of beer.
What's mine?
Gin and tonic?
I'll do one.
I forgot to tell you, I laughed in that.
That's okay, I always take that. This first message is from Cecil Elspeth, his parents. No, I won't. I'll start with the one from his sister. This is Euan's sister, Alison. Hi, Andy. I'm so sorry that I can't be present at Euan's memorial on Friday. Unfortunately, the timing is really bad. And I was in Dubai just a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't make it back. I'm really, really sorry. Anyway, I was thinking of something that I could say at the event, apart from the obvious about how much I loved him and miss him. Then I remembered a story about my first guide camp, which was actually at the local estate, only a short walk from our house in Eaglesham at the time. Anyway, as a young and eager guide, I packed my rucksack, or should I say the one that I borrowed from my big brother. And I started off on the walk from our home to the campsite. And the thought of being able to do whatever I wanted to do without my parents nagging at me or my brother bossing me around and telling me what a pain I was made me feel quite excited. However, on setting off, after a short time, I began to think that I had packed far too much in the way of clothes and food because the pack was very, very heavy. And it was only a weekend's camp. But then, what's a camp without your snacks for a midnight feast? So the weight in my rucksack was probably due to all of the snacks. However, on arrival at our camp, we pitched our tents and we started to sort out our stuff in our patrol tents. When I opened my rucksack, I was enraged to find 4 large boulders that Euan had placed. So now we know he was a clown from the beginning. He placed in my bag just before I left. On return from camp, I decided to get revenge. So I placed a very large, hairy spider in his bed. Those of you that know Euan, he was absolutely petrified of snakes and spiders and flies and, you know. I was slightly scared of the spider, so I thought it'd better if I waited up until he went to bed so that I could at least get my spider back into my control. Anyway, I waited and waited. After seeing Euan head to bed, but not a sound came from his room, nothing. Eventually, I mustered up the courage to go to his room and apologize for my joke and beg for the spider back. He was lying in bed, and he said he hadn't known what I was talking about, so I confessed my sins, whereupon he leapt out of bed, only to find that he was actually sitting on the spider and hadn't even seen it. That is typical of Euan. Well, I hope that this is the kind of things. Please send our thanks to all of Euan's friends and know that we are thinking of you today. With much love, Alison Smylie. Yeah. The next one is from, it's an email that was sent from Scott, who's Euan's son. This is my little anecdote, and I hope you like it. 3 years ago, my dad, Euan, and I had taken this much-loved dirt bike out to some remote dunes. We kitted up, and he took some mandatory cool bike shots before I proceeded to stall the bike several times, much to his amusement. In typical dad fashion, he jumped on the bike to show me how it was done. He went shooting off into the distance, over the dunes, and just leaving me standing in the soaring heat in the middle of the desert. After a long time, I retreated into the car and waited for his return. Arriving around 20 minutes later, dripping with sweat and a huge smile on his face, it was now my turn. Obviously, after seeing nothing of his skills, I was still a little bit cynical of some of the tricks that he had apparently said he'd pulled off. After burning my leg on the exhaust, I got quickly reacquainted with the controls. I thought it was now my time to show off and went flying off over the dunes. I got about 200 meters before falling over and getting trapped under the bike. After my rescue and some mockery from my dad, it was somehow his turn again, mere minutes after mine. Leaving me yet again, he attempted to show off by riding the biggest dune around. Karma struck as he also fell off the bike. However, it would seem that in typical dad fashion, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the bike and that he was not to blame. Sorry, that there was something wrong with the bike and that he was not to blame. As he always said, his skills are never to blame, it is merely the equipment's fault. That's you. The second last message comes from his daughter Jennifer. In September, I started learning to drive. From the very beginning, there are many things you are taught never to do. You must not rev your engine at traffic lights. You must not swerve and show off on the roads. And you must not blare music so loudly that you can't hear the sound of other road users. These are all things that Dad thoroughly enjoyed and activities that he frequently partook in. One particular moment springs to mind when Dad and I were driving through the Clyde Tunnel in Glasgow. It was a warm day and Dad had all the windows rolled all the way down. Suddenly, Lady Gaga's Just Dance started playing on the radio. Turning the music up to absolutely full blast, he insisted on Daddy dancing wildly in the car, singing at the top of his lungs. Other cars began to slow down as they passed us, staring. I don't want to know what they were thinking. It was right there and then that I introduced another rule of driving to Dad. Never embarrass your daughter. You're not a boy racer anymore. Well, he never got rid of that one, did he? Dad's apparent driving skills were often the focus of our amusement. When we visited Dad and Ruth in Dubai 2 years ago, Dad took us into the desert to let my brother Scott drive over the sand dunes. Dad warned Scott of the speed and skill he had to maintain in order that we would never get stuck in the desert. I must admit that Scott's precarious driving and ability to practically make the car fly over the dunes was rather terrifying, but at least there was next to no chance of us getting stalled. Dad ordered him to stop immediately, claiming Scott's lack of control would have us stranded in no time. Dad took over, of course. We drove on the dunes for another 5 minutes before Dad slowed to such a speed that we ended up with our tires buried in the sand. We were stuck. We all had to clamber out of the car to get down on our hands and knees on the scorching sand and dig the car out. I guess you remember all this. Dad wore a pair of protective gloves which he kept to himself, and yet somehow he forgot to tell Scott and I about the jaggedy plants that had spikes that were invisible in the sand. Once we had managed to free the wheels, we drove off, and I spent the next few hours picking out these thorns from my fingers. Of course, the situation had been no fault of Dad's, if only Scott hadn't stopped in such an inconvenient place. Here's your horse's ass. And I got one last one, if I can, from Sess and Elspeth, his parents. Dear friends, Elspeth and I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to everybody in attendance at Sharjah Wanderers today, and also to the many, many absent friends. When I introduced you into the Wanderers back in '92, little did I expect that it would be any more than a courtesy visit during his summer break from university. He obviously felt differently and found his utopia. No more studying, masses of sunshine, masses of sport, typifying the heady enjoyment of life in the Emirates 30 years ago. As Euan's parents, we had great pride in our son, who showed natural charisma in his ability to enjoy good company, his prudence and dogged pursuits of principles. His premature demise on the 1st of March was devastating to us all. By your wonderful support and your love for Euan, you have today made our grieving tolerable and marks a turning point in our acceptance. A lesson for Scott and Jennifer, who will be the beneficiaries of their father's legacy. Our burden is today lightened. Horatio Nelson, on the morning before Trafalgar, and beset by unsurmountable personal problems, wrote to Emma Hamilton, his controversial partner, and said, "After rain there is sun. Your overt demonstration of affection and love for our beloved son Euan has perhaps brought us closer to that sun. We will be celebrating his life together in Scotland on the 26th of December, the 52nd anniversary of his birth, forever engraved in our hearts. Thank you all for your remarkable friendship and support over the years. God bless you all. Sess and Elspeth Smylie."
Euan Smylie! Euan Smylie is a horse's ass. He's the meanest, he's such a horse's penis.